Hi, everyone, and thank you for coming to our fourth and final session of our live Q&A series. We designed this series to give WordStream fans a chance to chat with some of our experts here and ask any online advertising related questions you have. We obviously know the COVID-19 pandemic is far from over, but has caused a lot of changes and ups and downs. We have seen some positive metrics and in the data some trends of an upswing. So we kind of wanted to have this last and final session giving us the opportunity to inform you how to reactivate and ramp up your accounts now that we're seeing that upswing in the data. And with that, I have Kristina Simonson here on the line with me today. You guys are super lucky to have her. She manages WordStream's Google and Facebook ads accounts. So she's super knowledgeable in this. She's having to think about this strategy for our accounts right now. And so she's got tons of insight for you all today. So please start asking your questions. We had some submitted beforehand, so thank you to everyone who did that. And I will pass it over to her now to get to the content.
Awesome. Thanks, Amanda. And thanks everyone for joining today. As Amanda mentioned, my name is Kristina Simonson. I'm the lead acquisition manager on the marketing team here at WordStream. And as part of my role, I do manage WordStream's very own paid advertising channels. So I'm excited to share some quick tips, but also answer questions to discuss how we're talking about ramping up within our very own paid accounts here at WordStream. Before we get into the tips and the questions, I wanted to kind of set the scenes when thinking about reactivating your online advertising spend and kind of ramping your performance back up. As we know as advertisers, going from increasing your spend overnight isn't as easy as flipping a switch. There's a lot that you have to consider when you want to begin to increase your spend as you've kind of brought that down during this current pandemic. So as you think about wanting to increase your spend and ramp up your accounts, I wanted to just use a quick analogy and talk about running a marathon. So let's say you ran a marathon 6 months ago. And since you ran the marathon 6 months ago, you've decreased your weekly mileage. And now you've decided, I want to run another marathon. You're starting to think about when you're going to sign up. If you take a step back and you think about, are you going to be ready to run that marathon tomorrow? It's really unlikely that as you prepare, as you consider to run another marathon, that you could run that marathon tomorrow. So the same goes to your paid advertising. When you think about reactivating your spend and going from your level right now where it's been when you've decreased your budgets and lowered your spend to try to ramp up where you once were, it's really important to think about what goes into ramping that back up and setting expectations. Not only is it unlikely that you'd be able to run a marathon tomorrow after not training for 6 months, it's also unlikely that you'd be able to run that marathon at the same or better pace as you did in six months ago. So if you think about ramping your spend back up to previous thresholds or increasing to a new level, you want to make sure that you set expectations that it's going to take time and it's also going to take learnings to get to that performance level you're used to. So it's important to think about when you're reactivating your online advertising spend and performance that you can get to the finish line. You can run that marathon again, you can get back to previous levels, and you can feel accomplished as here on the right. But you also want to understand what goes into reactivating your accounts, which is what I'm really going to try to set expectations today and what I'm doing internally. Making sure that your stakeholders, and even yourself as you're managing these accounts, understand that it takes the time, it takes analyzing, it takes preparing to really get you to that finish line and running that marathon and reactivating your accounts to your kind of previous levels. So as I've kind of set the scene of reactivating your account, making sure that you're kind of thinking through those steps, I wanted to just give some quick tips before we get into those questions. And I like to think about breaking up your online advertising today in these 4 segments. 1, making sure what you're doing in your advertising accounts is focused on driving ROI today. So while you're thinking about reactivating your accounts and ramping back up, you don't want to forget about what you're doing today and how that spend is delivering for your accounts. Make sure that you're cutting any wasted spend and doing the right optimizations to drive ROI today, and then begin to think about when you ramp up. So as you're focusing on ROI today, you now want to think about how you prepare to ramp back up, how you're getting back into this training mode. So I really like to think about getting back to the basics, using this time as you've lowered your advertising budget, kind of condensed your accounts, and think about how you can get back to the basics. Make sure that your accounts are built off a strong foundation, checking in on best practices, and making sure as you do reactivate, you're doing that off of the right foundation. After getting back to the basics and going through those checklists, it's all about setting to scale. So now that you've checked in on your foundation, you're ready to build back up, you want to understand when you should scale and what's likely to happen. So taking the time to analyze your advertising accounts and see how has COVID-19 impacted your performance. And then also look within those performance metrics to say, this tells me it's time to scale, or I should wait to scale because the data is telling you so. And then as you set to scale, you kind of need to enable the paid advertising platforms to spend more. So you want to think about re-enabling your account by broadening your targeting or reactivating things you had changed. So really thinking about account reactivation from driving ROI today and then taking these steps to make sure that when you are ready to scale, you're going to do it in the right way and you're going to be happy with your results. So I just wanted to do a quick kind of background, get us into the stage of thinking about reactivating your online advertising, and I will head into the live Q&A and get to answer your questions.
Cool. Thank you. That was awesome. We did have some questions already coming through, and I wanted to actually just start with some of the questions that were submitted before, because I think that will give us a good foundation to start on. So kind of backtracking, you know, when everything happened with COVID-19, there was and still is a like faux pas. You're not allowed to use COVID-19 or coronavirus in your keywords in the way you set up your accounts and your ads and how you're targeting. So can you just explain to everyone why that is and some ways to kind of work around it? And like we all know that COVID-19 and coronavirus are probably very highly trafficked searches right now, but what can we do to kind of take advantage of the increased traffic in other ways?
Yeah, definitely. And great question. I think when you think about the search engines and specifically Google, Google really cracks down on making sure that their policies and they're working to kind of fight misinformation, especially during this time with COVID-19. And thinking about if someone is searching for guidance around COVID-19, they want to make sure that an ad isn't showing up that is going to spread misinformation or not be the right resource. So Google has really cracked down on who can bid on those terms and who could use them in their ads. So I think it's really kind of what I've seen is mainly in the kind of the government or healthcare sector is where you can kind of being able to have some flexibility with that. But I'd say for most accounts, even though you can't bid on that active intent if someone's using COVID-19 or coronavirus in their search term, you can think about what other keywords and searches they're using that surround that term. So using your own data or Google search trends and see how have the people navigated to your website or in your industry and how have they changed the way they searched. A good example here is something like a restaurant industry. So if someone historically is people have been searching things like booking a reservation for a restaurant, and maybe that's re-enabling now, but kind of at the peak of coronavirus, restaurant reservations was declining, way less popularity, but instead what we saw is that restaurant takeout was peaking in popularity. So taking the time to understand your industry, your location, your business to say how are people evolving the way they search and then leaning into that. And it doesn't really rely on having a bid on those terms because you can still be able to figure out kind of how they've shifted the way they search. So I'd say one, really thinking about what keywords and search terms they're using, and then two, lean into your audience targeting with your Google search. So if you think about observed audiences in Google Ads, there might be some information you can pull in based on the audience they fall into to either customize your ads or adjust your bids. So I kind of would pair those two elements.
Yeah, and I also think about the fact that, you know, COVID-19 and coronavirus are such highly trafficked words that would you really be getting the quality traffic that you want? that you want to spend money on if you're just using more generalized terms like that. So really thinking about your industry and the way people are searching for your specific services versus that umbrella or net approach of those big words anyway.
Exactly. And one thing, depending if you do have, for your business, if you do have a strong organic presence or kind of content strategy on your website or on your blog, what you can do though is you can have that content rank organically and drive traffic for you when it relates to your solution and how you can help with COVID-19. So one thing that might be an interesting pairing is creating a remarketing list for people who have visited your website and read about how you can help with COVID-19 and layer that in with your search. So you're not bidding on the keyword, but you know that those people have actually been to your site and read some sort of content about how you can help with COVID-19. And then you can really kind of use that in your bid strategy within your Google Ads account.
Cool, yeah, exactly. So I have a question that came in through the chat that kind of relates to something else you and I were talking about before we went live today. So this person on the line heard that prices for Facebook ads have recovered to roughly pre-COVID levels. Are there still good opportunities on Facebook and Instagram, or is it getting a bit too crowded? We also know here at WordStream that traffic on social media has just skyrocketed. So interested to get some of your insight on that, Christina, and then maybe we can kind of tie in ways to take advantage of that increased traffic on Facebook and kind of improve your creative excellence and ads there.
Yeah, totally. And definitely a good thing to be thinking about. We've seen and kind of in the numbers, especially once things started to, as COVID-19 and the pandemic peaked back in March and really became shifting the way that we all live and we behave. What we saw is immediately we could see the trends in how people behave online. So people aren't exactly commuting to work anymore, or they're not at their desk at work, they're still back at home and they're kind of engaging online in different ways. So they're going on their social networks more often. They're maybe reading the news in different ways. They're changing the way they search. So Facebook and specifically saw I think it was in April, a new high in monthly active users. So with people staying home and changing the way that they're behaving, it's increasing the potential reach for advertisers actually. So even though maybe the pairing that happened where prices really dropped in March and April was that people were spending more time on Facebook, and we're also seeing advertisers reduce their spend. So if you were actively advertising, you were really taking advantage of the cheaper prices in the ad auction. And I think what's happening today is that maybe some people are seeing that trend and they're identifying the opportunity, or they're regulating their spend and they're coming back to advertise maybe at a higher level. So I think even though competition might be coming up a bit, you still have to imagine that there is an increase in activity and people are spending a significant amount of time on Facebook. So I would say that I imagine the costs are going to remain pretty low and affordable for advertisers to kind of take advantage of that cheaper reach on Facebook today.
Awesome. And then could you just touch on some of your tips for how you see such great results on Facebook for WordStream, and what are some like ad creative tips and just making sure that you're really utilizing things like video and such as that you're allowed to use on Facebook to get those good results?
Yeah, definitely. I think for our core, for when I think about Facebook advertising for our WordStream accounts, it's kind of based in three main segments. One is, how's our account structured, and does that match up with our marketing funnel and our goals? So I'm a big believer in setting our account up to actually match our marketing funnel. So having things that are maybe a campaign that might be awareness, and it's really the objective is to drive reach, versus having campaigns that are set up to drive conversions, and we're going to be a little more targeted. So I think the core of our Facebook account is basing our account structure and our objectives based on our marketing funnel. So we've kind of got that piece of that foundation I talked about that's building off of. The second piece I would say is creative excellence. So Facebook says that they actually talk about, obviously there's so many components to advertising on Facebook, but they say that creative excellence is the most important thing for an advertiser to drive great performance. So we've seen this in our accounts, and we've kind of pivoted to make sure that we adhere to these creative best practices to drive strong performance. So the basis for us in our account has been always using video and using animation. We found that using some sort of motion in our ads is really compelling to get people to kind of stop scrolling on Facebook and actually look at our ad and interact with it. So using video components, and then the second one is, which is kind of a newer trend and topic in Facebook advertising, which is placement asset customization. So if people are engaging with Facebook and Instagram, they're not always doing it in the same way. Sometimes on a desktop news feed, sometimes on Instagram, sometimes in their stories. And you really have to think that your creative has to figure out a way to kind of flex into those different placements and look appealing and compelling to your prospects. So we've actually focused on making sure that we have specific creative for the different placements and worked on it this past quarter. I was excited. I actually checked last week. I noticed that our cost per conversion dropped by over 70% for the story placement by just making sure that our ad creative kind of matched that placement. So I
That's
would definitely, recommend kind of optimizing your creative and checking back in on that because it can definitely make or break your performance.
cool. Yeah, and that kind of is in line with something someone else just asked. If are there like other recommendations for platforms outside of Facebook that could kind of give similar results with that interactive kind of approach, or is Facebook the thing for that?
Yeah, I mean, Facebook is a huge opportunity because you've got the Facebook platform, you also have Instagram. So I think there's so much reach and so much you can do there. Even um, if you think about, maybe you think if you're in a different industry, you might not be able to find maybe your exact targeting that you think works best for Facebook. Really think about how you can leverage Facebook's machine learning and algorithm to find people in different ways. So things like lookalike audiences and the reach that you can get on the platform is definitely really significant at a cheap reach.
Mhm.
But if you're looking to go outside of, if you've kind of got your Google search in Facebook and maybe you want to try something else, there are so many different platforms, but one I might recommend is using the Google Display Network. Just like Facebook, it has a massive reach and scale that you can deliver your ads. It's a different network and different experience, but you can kind of get that significant reach. But more specifically, what I would recommend today is trying Google's discovery ads. So it's rather than the full display network on Google, discovery ads are actually only targeting placements on Google's owned entities, so things like YouTube and Gmail and the news feed. So it might be a good way to get an expansion in your reach, but really focus on quality of leads as well.
Mhm. I think that's great advice. Um, okay, cool. Let's take it back to some more focused reactivation questions. So you talked about some of your main tips for knowing when to ramp up, but what are the signals you're looking for to truly reactivate your online advertising accounts?
Yeah, I think there's so much different kind of data points to look into and kind of digging in the trends. And I'd say for our accounts, what I'm looking for first is the health of our account performance. So before thinking about scaling things back up, I want to make sure that our core KPIs are at least at our benchmark or hopefully better. So what I would base our kind of starting decisions at is the cost per conversion for our WordStream account. So checking in on each network and kind of saying, okay, where do we stand today? Is our cost per conversion at a healthy rate? And if it is at a good level where that's good for us, then it kind of tells you, okay, people are at least still engaging with our ads and converting at the right cost for us. So we can afford to kind of spend more and continue to get kind of cost efficiency for our funnel. So I would look at making sure that your KPIs are still at that healthy level. And then the signals kind of outside of that is looking for can you expand and how could you expand? So one example I'll give is on the search network, check in on your search impression share. So if you're doing well, your KPIs look well, and your search impression share is only 35%, for example, if you just change your campaign level budget and kind of make sure you focus on ad rank, you can easily spend more. So kind of look for those leading indicators that tell you that there is more reach out there, and then kind of figure out how you can lean into that.
Sure, awesome. Um, so let's see, let's do another one. I like this question we kind of chatted about before going live too. I think it'll be helpful for the audience. How do you use website analytics to determine when to ramp up? And what are some tips you could give to the people on the line today?
Yeah, so I think I'm love Google Analytics, kind of always in there, kind of looking at our full funnel as and I would say there's a lot that's shifting for many businesses, especially even in WordStream, is digging in to say, like, first comes first is how are people changing the way they get to our website? And we've been able to see, I think the trends are showing too, is that we're seeing a change in the blend of sources and ways that people get to our website. For us, for example, we've seen our organic traffic actually increase rapidly during this time because we've been putting out fresh content and coverage on our blog that's been able to kind of drive an increase in traffic. So we've seen that our organic search and referral traffic increase. We've also, it's been interesting to kind of watch how does your social traffic increase as well. So even if you're paid advertising separately, but are people interacting with your organic social channels in a different way? Because I think we're seeing that actually happen in the space. So really what I've been looking at first is how are we acquiring traffic and how has that shifted, which has been really interesting. But then also how are people behaving on your website? So depending on how your traffic is evolving, are people bouncing at a higher rate? Are they converting at a better rate? Where are they exiting your website? So kind of digging in on the pages that they're reading, and that behavior will help you to understand, are people coming to my website for the right things? Are we providing the value they're looking for? We'll give you kind of a lot of answers to trying to figure out what these website visitors are looking for.
Cool. I wonder if, so I think I'm understanding this question right that came in. I'm just wondering if you have any best practices for using the Facebook lead ads, or this person's having like trouble feeling like they're not getting the greatest quality when they use the Facebook lead format.
Yeah, definitely a good question. And I've actually, we've kind of tackled with this in the past as well, is using the lead ad integration and making sure that you're still getting as high quality if you send someone to your website and have them fill out that form. So what I
Hmm.
would recommend is kind of two things. Facebook has rolled out a new setting with Facebook lead generation ads where I can't remember the exact name, so sorry, but there's two options when you're building out the form in your ad, and there is an option to tell Facebook that you're looking for higher quality. So I would definitely recommend, if you're seeing an issue in lead quality, is check that box so Facebook knows that you want to optimize to really get high quality leads in your form. Also consider your form fields that are in that ad. So make sure the settings are set up, but also you're asking the questions that your business needs to kind of qualify these leads. So you can add in the kind of the automatic fields that Facebook has, but you can add in custom fields for your business. So I'd recommend optimizing your form to make sure you kind of improve that quality. And then also check in on your targeting. Is your target audience super broad and maybe you're not reaching the right people and that's why it's an issue with lead quality? So kind of looking at the signals of how you're targeting people and make sure that it's right for who you want to be reaching.
Yeah, perfect. Okay, so we've got a couple minutes left. I have two really great questions that I think will round out this half hour nicely, but what are some of the biggest mistakes you've seen marketers doing in this time? Obviously, we're all learning day to day, but what would you identify as some mistakes you've seen, and how do you think this will evolve over time as well, marketing in COVID-19?
Yeah, so I think it's been interesting to kind of take a step back and see how advertisers are pivoting. And I think I'll kind of answer this, I think, a couple things that I'm sure some of you have noticed as well. I think one of the biggest mistakes, and obviously it has to be a business decision, but is kind of pulling out of advertising completely. As I talked about, Facebook has decreased in the costs. You still have that reach in your online advertising channels, whether it's Google search or Facebook or wherever you're advertising. And I definitely would say, even though maybe you need to reduce your investment today, I think a big mistake is pulling out of your advertising completely, because that then stops the reach that you were having for your business. It also means that if you've paused your accounts completely, it's going to be much harder for you to reactivate, because you don't really have a steady delivery to kind of ramp things back up. So I'd say one being that. Secondly is kind of using which I'm sure you've seen kind of different ads, but the copywriting cliches. So kind of things like we're all in this together, and kind of those messages that are becoming very overused. So I think trying to stay away as much as you can. We all need to be resourceful and pivot how you're using copywriting, but think about how you can kind of differentiate your business to kind of stand out from the pack when people are reading ads and seeing all these kind of same common messages.
Definitely.
So I think those would be the mistakes. And then I think things are going to continue to change, like we're seeing as it as things are changing and opening up in different geos and in different regulations and rules. I think as things are opening up, trends will kind of continue to shift. But something that's going to happen is that we are definitely going to develop new norms on the way that people behave online, and also the way that people behave with brands and make decisions. So people are less used to, for these past few months, going into a store or maybe going in to meet in person before making a purchase, and they've been relying on their online experiences to make those decisions. So I think as you think about these new norms, it's really important to lean in on that increase in online consumption, and make sure you're getting in front of your prospects and customers as they shift, and kind of make sure that you can continue to fuel your funnel, no matter how people are engaging or able to engage with your business.
Yeah, and I think too, something that we've been talking about here at WordStream is just, people, especially in the beginning of this, weren't ready to just buy now, buy now, buy now, and a lot of time sensitive things felt out of touch. So really offering consultative services if you can, different ways to help people figure out if your product or service is right for them, adding those extra call touches to talk about the state of their business and things like that, to really just be a human about everything going on, because everyone's being affected by this in different ways. And I think that's really important too. And I think someone brought up, when your budget is cut so much, is there an alternative to targeting or other things we can do outside of ads? And something I was thinking about was just continuing to keep up with your social media presence, showing the human touch of your business, being actively posting on that, and showing how you as a company are pivoting for COVID. But I didn't know if you had any other ideas outside of your traditional online advertising accounts, if you had any suggestions there, Christina.
Yeah, definitely. I think, and what we've kind of done during this time too, is just dig into to see where are these kind of new opportunities in a more free way, or free activities. So things like, Amanda, you and I have worked on things that we might not have worked together as much in the past, but these past 3 months we've kind of figured out where there's some gaps that we can jump in on to try to fill with a new strategy. So I think it's really like collaborating across the team and thinking about where you can get more for less. So using your website as a way to drive conversions, getting people in the funnel and then nurturing them to that next step. The other thing that we didn't mention is kind of your Google My Business, making sure that you have your visibility on Google as well in an organic way. So I think there's a ton of, and there's a bunch on our WordStream blog as well, with resources to show you all, maybe some tips and tricks for some kind of free ways to also fill your funnel while your budget is a little bit reduced.
Oh yeah, we do have a great blog post, so be sure to check out our blog about that, because I think that's such a good point with Google My Business, making sure your hours are up to date, that you have a message about how you're handling everything. Yeah, we're really working, like Christina on the acquisition side of things and me in the nurture and engagement side of marketing. We're really working closely together to say, what can we do with our existing database to really get the most out of them? Can we change our form around? Can we try a chat function? Can we do anything else with the stuff that we already have, or the people we already have, the accounts we're already nurturing, and make the most of that versus focusing as much effort on the paid acquisition side.
Definitely.
Cool. Well, I hope that's kind of positive. A good way to end is a look forward and really trying to understand how you can use the data that you have access to today, your database, and making the most out of it. Really using Google My Business, your website, and other ways that are free that can help you continue to be a presence online and continue to have people be interested in your product or service. But with that, we are at the half hour. It goes by so quick. I wanted to thank Christina for being here. This was the 4th session out of 4, so thank you for everyone who attended all 4. And if you weren't able to, we've got the follow-up assets coming your way, which will have we'll bring you to a landing page with the recordings of all 4 sessions. So we covered everything from trends on Google from the very beginning of this pandemic to this reactivation session, as well as marketing copy and SEO. So it's been a really great experience to run these Q&As, and we hope that everyone found them super helpful. So with that, I will log off today, but you can expect the recording and slide deck to your inboxes within the next 24 hours. So thanks everyone for coming.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.